in regards to how do we find socially responsible banking options here in Canada, because the two greenest banks, according to information out there, is TD and Royal Bank, who are the two biggest financiers of fossil fuels as well. So, Ariel?
Basically, the reason these banks can tout themselves as environmentally friendly banks or green banks is because they're not actually accountable for their financed emissions. So they're actually green because the corporation themselves has like green buildings, and it has adopted like environmentally sound principles and invests in green energy as well. But when you take the level of investment of their green investments versus their unsustainable fossil fuel investments, you find that it's really off kilter. But they're not responsible or accountable to those emissions. They're just talking about how they have like they have billions of dollars invested in green sustainable energy, but they also have like probably triple the amount of investments in the fossil fuel industry. But the way that we sort of green things is they don't really take those things into consideration. So what banks are there? That's the short answer to your first question, the first part of your question. And then it's like, well, what banks are there? So we have studied all the banks. So we haven't just studied RBC. We've studied every single bank, and we've sort of put them in an order. And RBC is not only the largest financer to tar sands out of the Canadian banks. We've actually just recently discovered that RBC is the largest financer of tar sands out of all financial institutions of the world. So this puts them as the leading financer of tar sands. Period. End of story. I'm done. It's followed closely by like Toronto Dominion, then it is CIBC, and then it is BMO, and then it's Scotiabank for the Canadian banks. And if you want to stay with a Canadian bank, your best two bets are Desjardins, which is a French bank out of Quebec but has branches across the country. It is actually the greenest bank in all of the country and has zero investments in the tar sands. It is followed by a close second with Van City, which also has branches across the country. It's a Vancouver-based bank, obviously by the name, but it does have minimal investments in the tar sands, so we don't know if those are going to increase. And again, Scotiabanks, you're right, they're very tricky. You have to really research your Scotiabanks, and if you're going to try and bank outside of the country, there are obviously offenders within that industry as well. HSBC has large investments in the tar sands. Dexia, which is a French bank, but we don't really have here, also invest in the tar sands. And my knowledge is kind of limited. Bank of America, almost every single American bank is like pretty high up there, so I wouldn't go with any of them either. So your best bet is Desjardins.
Thank you, Ariel. And then we had a question.